You guys been enjoying WoW? You guys been having a good time? Evidently, a lot of people have, because WoW's health, the numbers don't lie, and these numbers look like Legion numbers. Wow. Let's see the breakdown by Bellular here. Is WoW really? Is WoW back? Is WoW back, boys?
I'll start with a pretty simple fact. There's no point in filling a leaky bucket with water. Now here, our bucket is World of Warcraft, and the water is us, the players. Filling the bucket is like launching an expansion with all those millions of marketing dollars. And patches are what keeps the bucket from leaking. Now take a look at this. This is the number of guilds who defeated the final raid boss within that raid boss's season during WoW's healthiest times. At most of Legion and then later BFA. You can see here that the bucket isn't super leaky. And here's Shadowlands, where leaky doesn't even do it justice.
Nobody cared about killing the jailer. Nobody.
Gushing out of the bucket. And that represents WoW really at its least healthy. So,
yeah, same.
Now that we've got Season 3 and we can draw the trend line, it is time to investigate. And of course, today's sponsor. Raycon. This holiday season, you can get premium audio and power tech at an awesome price and save even more by going to buyraycon.com/bellular to get another 15% off site-wide. Now, of course, the everyday earbuds are what really put them in the map for audio. They've since expanded into home tech and power tech. I especially like the PowerPad Pro for just nailing wireless charging, and the really handy 180 charging cable.
Yeah, Leaky, you're talking about Twitch numbers? I agree. I feel like since the patch went live, Twitch numbers have been way up for WoW content, which is usually an indication of the game being more popular.
Super solid all day. I'll shake my head about, they'll be in, and the battery life. 8 hours of playtime with a 32-hour battery life overall with the case. 8 hours is a hell of a lot more than the ones I've been used to in the past. They're hitting the specifications that I want at often half of what other comparable buds from other brands cost. And of course, you got the premium
Season of Discovery's been popping off
resistance, which handles that delightful Northern Irish weather that does try to interrupt me, say, listening to audiobooks when I go for a big old walk. Now, as for everything else, you got all the creature comforts coming with a wireless charging case, of course, cable, 5 pairs of silicone tips so that you can find the best possible fit for that ideal passive noise isolation, tens of thousands of 5-star reviews, free returns, shipping, buy now, pay later options if that's what you want as well, and of course, dead handy to just get a real handy gift sorted. So you can go to buyraycon.com/bellular, and there you'll get 15% off site-wide. So cheers, Raycon. Check them out. And
come super rare on me. Why didn't it call that out? Thank you, It's Squid. Thank you so much for the sub. Continue to be a death knight of our Scourge.
We'll kick it off with the raid then. So our data is gathered from Raider.io, and that is actually directly from Blizzard's Armory API. And that means that this is actual real Blizzard data. That's the really key thing. Now, what we're able to track here is the number of guild kills per boss. So, pugs, non-guild groups. No, we actually cannot track those, but while I'm sure they are a large number, and they'll become relevant later on in the video, World of Warcraft is an MMO, and therefore, more than anything, guild play represents its beating heart. All data for today's video is for week 1 and 2 of the season, minus Asian realms. Okay, week 1. Here are the first boss kills in Vault versus Aberrus versus Emir Drasil for week 1. This targets, of course, the most active slice of World of Warcraft's player base, and yeah, you can see a bit of a decline. However, that is completely normal. Expansions bring people back, patches mostly serve to keep them from leaving. Again, think of that analogy of the leaky bucket, and that's where things are incredible. Emir Drasil only dropped 8.84% in first boss kills from Aberrus. That is hardly anything. Historically speaking, that is an extremely healthy number for World of Warcraft, and it shows
so the people who are playing continued to play. That's what he's saying.
Active guilds are sticking around. Back in Shadowlands, we were talking about more like 50% drops, not 8% drops. Now, the drop from Vault to Aberrus was 18%. That's larger, but it being larger is normal. Vault was the start of the expansion. That's where the game would have the most players to lose. Next then, let's take a look at clear rates on a per boss basis for week 1 of each of this expansion's rates. Did you find...
I wonder, you saw the drop to Aberrus. I wonder if the expansion announcements got people to come back more. Like, I do think this patch is good. It's a fun patch. The raid is great. Everything's good about the Emerald Dream, to me, at least. But I wonder if people saw the direction the expansions were going and decided to come back because of that. They were like, okay, yeah, this looks like it's headed in the right direction. I guess I'll finish this whole Dragonflight expansion out and get ready for the real stuff. Yeah, Farak feels easier than Sark. I actually think the hardest end boss so far of this game, of Dragonflight, was Razageth. I think Razageth was harder than Sark, but difficulty aside, maybe it's the expansion that got people to come back.
Mirdrasil normal to be a little bit easier.
Saga.
If so, no wonder, because that's exactly what our data shows. Versus Vault, Mirdrasil and Aberrus
I've been playing more WoWs of late
higher
too.
week 1 clear rates. The steep line in Vault shows slower progress, and Mirdrasil's sort of shallow, less spiky line with only the final 2 bosses stepping up the challenge, well, that shows that it is easier, and it's a pattern that's much like Aberrus normal mode as well.
Yeah,
and
I think this is the easiest raid.
That, like my team, we cleared both raids within 2 raid nights on normal mode, but for Mirdrasil, it was far easier, especially comparing Farak to Sarkareth.
Yes,
when this is translated
agreed.
into week 1 numbers, we see a clear rate that's wild. 8,618 guilds defeated Farak in week 1 normal mode, a 62% increase from Aberrus, which itself was a 2,300 kill increase from Vault. Yeah.
Can we just agree on something? WoW players don't like super hard raid content. Sanctum of Domination was or Sepulchre of the first one was the hardest raid I've ever experienced in WoW. Ever. Mechanics were punishing. There were tons of one-shotters. Pugging that shit was super difficult. We did get it done. But I think overall, people have been enjoying Classic and people enjoy this new raid. Why is that? Because raiding in both of those is super easy. Those are easy raids. We've progressed further in this raid and quicker than we ever have. And I think it's because it's one of the easier raids. I think people like a little bit of a challenge, but they don't want to get bitch slapped over and over by the same boss. Yeah, and Blizzard went from they used to tune raids basically for Race to World first, and they stopped doing that after Sanctum of Domination and Sepulchre of the first ones.
That's a lot. Blizzard clearly does intend normal mode to be easier now than in the past. And that's kind of where data is our problem.
120
because
Anduin wipes.
what changes the most whenever a normal mode gets easier? Pug clear rates or guild clear rates? Obviously, I don't have data for pugs, so I can't tell you, but surely pickup groups, pugs, surely they, which aren't in our data, are going to disproportionately benefit from normal mode being easier.
Yep.
So I would suspect those pug clear rates are way up. Overall, then, expect 90% guild clear rates as we move forward, really for normal mode just in general. Now, many will still say to me that normal mode doesn't matter, that heroic and mythic are the real game. But here's the thing, normal is where people get their start. I think of the days of Icecrown Citadel 10 player.
That's true.
The easiest way to play ICC, all the way back in 2009 and 10 when that's the thing I was doing. ICC 10 was the gateway drug that got loads of people into raiding. So, give people a good time in normal mode and you'll create more heroic raiders. In our last video, I talked about clear rates and player attention, and one of the patterns we could see was that higher clear rates seem to lead to higher first boss kills in the next tier, basically retention. Blizzard's data clearly backs this up. Why else would they continue the intentionally easier tuning of normal mode as we've moved from Aberrus to Mirdrasil? Heroic mode then. First boss kills in week 1 increased by 2.37% from Mirdrasil. This really is quite incredible. I wouldn't say that this represents a growth or a complete, lack of losing players. I think this rather represents people clearing normal mode a bit faster and then being able to try the first 1 or 2 bosses in what remains of their final raid night.
That's true. That's what we did. I mean, we cleared normal faster than we thought we would, so we started doing heroic, and we got the first couple bosses down in heroic that first week too.
Week 1.
He's totally right on that.
This probably does bode well. As for our overall heroic mode clear rates, those are interesting. Razageth died 144 times to guilds in her first week. Sarkareth died 10,014 times, and Farak and heroic 895 times. So Sarkareth's 604% increase shows what we all felt, that Sarkareth was way easier than Razageth. But Farak does seem to be a slight step up from Sark on this mode. But of course, big picture, this is an 11.74% decrease in the final boss kill number from Season 3 to 2. but that obviously pales in comparison to the 604% increase that we saw from Season 1 to 2. So absolutely, we are still in the same territory of very high clear rates. And glancing back to our entire season-long data from last time, Aberrus Heroic had a clear rate of 78.25%. Only Nighthold and Nyalotha come close to that, and those were both raids.
And those are both times where I would think that the game's population was pretty healthy.
That happened in periods of WoW that were doing, by the numbers anyway, fairly decently.
Yeah.
As we go a little bit more granular, we can see the per boss clear rates. They are a little bit steeper than with Aberrus, but absolutely it does represent more than with Vault. We could have just rolled with week 1 numbers, but overall we just wanted to wait a little bit extra just to see how the data would shake out. And really the difference that you see in normal mode is the final boss kills being a bit smaller in week 2 than in Aberrus, but that kind of does make sense because Emir's normal Farak kills were very front-loaded compared to Sarkareth, where for many people just getting into the next reset and getting that extra bit of loot, that's what got them the kill. So clearly, we are just seeing the same trends continue from week 1 as we move into week 2. Emir's normal has what is almost certainly the highest early clear rate in WoW's history for a raid.
Good.
Its week 2 clear rate is in fact higher than some other raids.
I've always felt that normal should be fairly accessible to the masses. Normal should be that way to experience it, because normal is real raiding. LFR really isn't. LFR is like, oh, you want to see what the inside of the dungeon, the raid looks like? Go check it out in LFR. But that's not like real raiding. LFR is just a way to get things done if you never have time to raid ever. But like, to me, normal should be that entry into raiding, right? It should be a way to like do some mechanics, experience the raid, get that excitement of like downing a boss with a group of friends, like that kind of stuff. Going through a raid, normal should be that entry. And then when you want to do difficult content, that's where heroic comes in. And then mythic is like insanity if you want to do like insane shit. But to me, I know that's what LFR is for, that's what you're saying, but LFR is not a true raiding experience. I just feel like it's not. I feel like it's just like a big dungeon. The first true raiding experience in the game, if you ever really want to raid, is normal. And that's why it should be fairly accessible. Like, normal isn't just a cakewalk. It takes coordination and stuff, as raiding should, but it's accessible. Like, you can do it. If you try, you can do it.
Across their entire
Heroic is more gear dependent, too. Like, Heroic requires you to put in work outside of the raid to get it done, whereas normal, really, you can just gear out by doing normal and get it done.
Here. Now, as I move on to heroic mode, again, you
LFR
see
feels
what
like a Zerg. Yeah, there's no
expect.
mechanics in LFR.
The TLDR here is that Emirdrasil is performing like Aberrus, and overall, from all that we've been able to gather, that seems like a very good thing for World of Warcraft.
That's what LFR kind of is, King
I'll just
Julian.
touch Mythic quickly. So
it's really a way to experience story content more than actual raiding.
Our Boss 1 participation is down 21.63% from Aberrus, but it had boss numbers that were 54.34% higher than Vault. Overall, I think this is just kind of reflecting like difficulty, guild progress. We kind of went into a lot of detail in Mythic in the prior video in this series, where Mythic overall has been pretty stable. Anyway, the walls in Emirdrasil do seem to hit a little bit harder than in Aberrus, though, because you actually see the per boss clear rates of Emirdrasil being a little bit easier than Aberrus.
Which one's Smolderon? Is Smolderon boss 7? Is Smolderon boss, I think it is, right? He bitch slapped us. Look, it goes from 45% to 3.9%. So that's a big drop off. Yeah, so clearly we're having difficulty with a boss. It looks like the last 3 bosses of the raid are, by far and away the most difficult. And that's where people hit a wall. So we're not stupid for being stuck on Smolderon. It looks like the majority of people get stuck on Smolderon. Whereas Vault of the Incarnates, Aberrus. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
But only for a...
Damn, what was boss 3? What was boss 3 in Vault of the Incarnates? I don't even remember, but that one, holy crap, what a drop-off. That beat the shit out of people.
While, because
Taros,
with
maybe.
Tindral, 0.24% had defeated
look
that
it up.
boss by week 2, while 1.22% had defeated Echo of Neltharion. So
Was it
yeah,
the
fairly
elemental
interesting.
boss?
Shooting into the race, and there's some interesting data for that later, it is clear that people are pretty pumped about the raid. I mean, Liquid's leader Max said that this is the best raid they've made in a long time.
It's a great
in his
raid.
opinion.
I
That's
like it a
sentiment
lot.
that I've seen a lot of people agree with. Normal mode was a fun bash, just to, get some gear, feel out some bosses. On Heroic, I have really loved.
I mean, Taros was kind of a gear check, so maybe that's why that was a big holdup for people. But if you went through it, I mean, you could do Primal Council, Taros, Sinath. But Taros looks like he was the second boss, unless you did Primal Council then Taros. I don't know. But who could have been the? Dathia was very difficult. I do remember. Maybe Kurog. I don't know what the third boss is that he's referring to, but something got.
What I've
That was
played so
difficult.
far, I'm actively looking forward
Dathia
to
was
next raid night.
difficult.
Quite a bit more than I actually had in the past. Okay, let's talk
Taros was a gear
about
check,
the
so maybe
race.
that's why.
Emir Drasil was an incredible race. It was so down to the wire. By the end, both guilds were having sub 2% pulls. Now, that translated to peak viewers just shy of 390,000. That clobbers the Vault race, which was 184k. No doubt, of course, helped by just the story of this raid being so good with how tight it was at the end. Now, I'm currently using moderated numbers from esports charts, which for some reason is missing Aberrus and Sanctum, but otherwise it does go back to Nyalotha, which is quite nice. And they combine the stats of Liquid, Max, Echo, Method, and Gingy. I know that isn't everybody, but at least it's kind of like for like. Anyway, here they are. Sepulchre of the first one is obviously the king of watch time, but that's because there was 441 hours of airtime.
I agree.
That was a
Razagath Heroic was
legendarily
the
long
hardest.
race. What is impressive, though, is just the peak that Emir Drasil is. Average viewers are shockingly level with Vault, even with Emir Drasil having 50 more hours of airtime. So more airtime, but holding a similar average viewer count, which is very healthy. And outside of Sepulchre of the first one, which is clearly an outlier, Emir Drasil is the most watched race to World First in this data set. And that truly is something to be happy about. This race does seem to be growing. During the race, I mean, WoW was the second most watched game on Twitch, and then, of course, Season of Discovery, that has also peaked some records, as I talked about in a recent Warcraft news episode. Season of Discovery has actually eclipsed peak Twitch viewership of every classic release outside of the original classic release, which is extremely...
Season of Discovery had WoW at number 1 with over 500k viewers, and that was 100k more than the next biggest thing, which was Just Chatting. Season of Discovery popped off, man.
Let's, though, talk a bit about Mythic Plus. All right, so massive credit to Nightstalker, very long-time viewer of the channel. He's an absolute whiz with data. So he has actually been doing some manual data collection from Raider.io, and he shared his findings with me. So just to compare weeks 1 and 2 of Mythic Plus for Season 2 and Season 3, this is what we get. Season 2 opened with 2,518,779 runs, and then 2,167,312 in week 2, right? Wow. So 2.5 million and kind of more like 2.2 million. Season 3 opened with 3,227,287, followed by 2,645,137. So, I know, very big numbers, but basically, the Season 3 numbers are larger, which is quite impressive. Nightstalker also, this is amazing, he compiled run and timed run numbers, calculating the ratio of runs done in time. And in a move that I think is perhaps echoing some things we've seen with
One thing I will say, too, about these numbers is, so we basically determined that Emir Drasil is the easiest raid so far in this expansion. None of his numbers include pug raiders. These are all guild numbers. When a raid is easier, I feel like more people pug it, too. So those numbers are probably even exponentially higher as well, because it's an easier raid, so more people are pugging it. I bet you if he could track that, you would see a crazy growth in the number of people doing the raid, even just in pugs.
Difficulty, we kind of see this, where Season 2's week 1 and 2 average clear rates were 80.09% and 78.1%. Season 3's, however, are 84.2% and 85.6%. So overall, we are seeing more runs and a higher percentage of those runs being in time. And furthering him being a data legend, he also broke it all down per week, per dungeon for Season 3. And I just thought this was quite interesting. So week 1, Fortifying Week, had a Tal'Dazar at a whopping 95.7% like in-time ratio, but Morzon's Rise was only 68.7%. So yeah, that very much explains those nerfs. To go big picture, Mythic Plus obviously de-emphasized affixes, it focused in on the dungeons, Blizzard have been fairly quick to tune in general, there's no seasonal affix, and there's a totally new pool of dungeons every single season. I mean, this time, there are 6 non-Dragonflight dungeons, whereas in the past, we would have been doing this, you would have been...
Can I just say, I mean, maybe Leaky can confirm this or not, if he's still here. I actually think this season of Mythic Plus is the best season of Mythic Plus so far, too. I could be wrong because I'm not a huge Mythic Pluser. I do it every week, but like I'm not somebody who's pushing 25 keys every week or something. But I feel like this season of Dungeons, the lineup is nice. I like it. And the affix system and everything, how it's working, I like it. This is the most fun I've had doing Mythic Plus in all of Dragonflight.
I mean, still in the sanguine depths. I know, a horrific prospect. Clearly then, these changes are actually working quite well. I think it's no wonder then that Blizz in a post-expansion announcement interview like just a few weeks ago said they will be continuing to keep the focus on the dungeons.
It's also full of crap.
Fixes. So, Mythic Plus, early data looks very positive indeed.
Yeah,
to break down the big picture then, the story of Dragonflight is one about repair, not one of growth, and that is what WoW needs. As I said at the top of the video, it is the analogy of the leaky bucket. There's no point releasing new expansions that are all big hype if the bucket is leaky. We kind of talked about this sort of thing today.
It's kind of true. Dragonflight really was the expansion that had to fix Shadowlands, what that did and everything. So it's in that case, I think it's done a good job. I think it's prepared us well for. It's kind of coddled the player base, gotten us ready for the World Soul Saga, and that's really going to be like Blizzard's next attempt at doing something big in the game. Whereas Dragonflight didn't have anything too crazy besides dragon riding. It was really just trying to fix everything. That's what it did.
And while the metrics that I can track here, they're not enough to confirm the suspicion that Dragonflight has succeeded, but they absolutely do point in that direction. Blizzard's experiments with Mythic Plus raid and gearing really do seem to have paid off. I cannot track world content, but I've got to imagine that its better state now is feeding in fairly positively. Of course, in the next expansion, we will add delves to that picture, and we'll be breaking down a bunch of restrictions with warbands. I think the combination of those will be very positive, and I really hope that warband stuff will be in the Blizzard Armory API.
What do I want to see in Season 4? Scarlet Monastery Mythic Plus, yeah.
Because then, if we could track warbands, oh boy, by the data, we would be cooking. What I believe from this is that WoW, as a game, can actually grow, and that the efforts to repair it have worked. We cannot teleport to where we want to be exactly, but I am confident that the game is now walking along the right track. I'm glad you stopped by. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and a special thanks to our members over at bellular.ghost.io. Not only do they provide us with vital support, but they also get videos like this early. They get a raft of exclusive content as well, like the Lore Walking podcast. You can check that out too. But till then, I'll see you in the next video.
Wailing Caverns Mythic Plus, Dead Mines Mythic Plus. I would love some of the really old dungeons to be Mythic Plus, but I know those are more difficult because they weren't made with Mythic Plus in mind. So, but they've been doing it to older dungeons, so maybe we'll see. But these numbers look great, man. These numbers look great. Good to see a happy, healthy WoW. Yeah, the player base has been good. Viewership's been good. I agree. WoW is back, baby. WoW is back.